Hello everybody, I hope you can hear me. Right. All right. So let's just wait for a couple of minutes to just check, that you can all hear me. All right. Just let me know in the comments below if you have any issues. And I think with that, we can take this forward. All right. Great. Welcome back to my session. My name is Amsa Venktesan and I'm an IELTS trainer with over 4+ years experience and have experience training close to 750 students, which is 21,000 plus online hours of training across the globe. Once again, I'm so excited to be partnering with Unacademy and to be talking to all of you in this IELTS Let's Crack It Speaking session today. As you all know from the title, in today's session we will be talking and discussing all about the most common mistakes most of the students make in IELTS speaking. I have specifically covered strategies for speaking task 3, which is your long conversation, which goes for about 4 to 5 minutes, because a lot of students have told me that you are finding it difficult to speak sentences which are quite long and that you're not able to think more than more than just a one sentence or one or two sentences. So in today's session I will let you know quick tips, like I always do, easy actionable tips that you can do from right now to get this done. All right, so getting into the session today, so I'm here to give you like a quick introduction as to what speaking test is all about. In the speaking task in both, if you're an academic student or a general module, aspirant, in both cases, your speaking and listening tests are the same. So both the general and the academic test takers pretty much take the same test. All right. Here in task 1, like I said, there are 3 sections, and in task 1, it's basically an ID check. So you gather in an examination room. So they just send you to a hall. You just gather yourself in a hall, and then they call out your name. And you go, after you're done with the registration, you go there. Once they call out your name, you get into the room. You take your passport and with a few other documents that they would ask you to do. Your passport is your main ID. All right. So once you get there, you get into the room. So it's just you and the examiner. It could be he or she, the examiner. And you get into the room with the examiner and you basically get yourself seated. And to start with a warm-up session and to not make it abrupt, they actually do the ID check. It's also to ensure that you are the right student taking the test and that they are not evaluating someone else for the answers that you gave, which is quite important, correct? So the first step is where they do the ID check. So they ask for your ID, which is your passport in this case, and they will ask you certain questions as to what's your name, where do you work, where do you come from, what's the reason you take the test, just to start as a warm-up session. All right. And also, so you feel relaxed and comfortable in the environment. My quick tip here is to ensure that you feel quite comfortable in this environment and take the time to, literally warm yourself up because you can do the rest of the test well. All right. So this is basically an ID check and a discussion between the test taker and the examiner, where both of you get to know each other, you feel comfortable and things like that. The second task is actually called the cue card, or we say that it's the talk, right? Where there are few cards presented in front of you. You pick a particular card, and whatever the card asks you about or whatever it tells you is what you'll talk about. All right. So the card might have something like, describe a vacation that you have been to, followed by 4 questions. So that card itself tells you what you have to do and what are the instructions that you might have to follow, right? So you basically follow the instructions. You will be given a minute and a pen and a paper to make notes. So you make quick notes of it, and then you write down all that you want to do and how you want to go forward answering those questions. Do not overthink this. Just make short bullet points, and you can always have the paper to refer back and talk to them. But just ensure you're able to talk for 1 to 2 minutes there in the talk. And also, my quick tip here again is to ensure that you make at least 10 to 12 points on the same. Because in case you have the time, because as you know, the examiner controls the length and the duration of your answer. In case you make notes of like 4 to 5 points, and task 3, which is basically an extension of your task 2, where both of you would, the examiner would question you, and you will have to answer for about 4 to 5 minutes, which is a lengthier version of your task 2. You should be able to ensure that you have enough points and you do not repeat the same points that you did in task 2, which will become a major blunder. So in this case, task 3 is basically, like I said, an extension of your task 2, where based on whatever you have done in your task 2 is what you will be questioned in task 3 as well. So for you to talk in the task 3 for about 4 to 5 minutes based on a few other questions that they ask you, you should have enough points, and you should really make use of that 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes that they give you to prepare notes. All right. Now, let's directly get into the mistakes that most students commit, especially in task 3. All right. These are quite applicable to task 2 as well. But I would say because you have to elaborate in task 3, these are a few mistakes which are very common and that I wanted to address in this session today. Mistake number 1 is that the answers are too short, which means, like I said again, it is way too important to elaborate your sentences. All right. So just make it more conversational. Just do not by heart an answer and tell them. Try to elaborate the sentence. Try to make it more conversational, just the way you talk to another person, because you actually have a person sitting in front of you. Enjoy the talk. Tell them what you want to do, or tell them what you have thought about in a beautiful, structured way. Always aim, for answers with 2 to 3 sentences, because that makes it really conversational. All right. In case you haven't encountered any situation that's given in the cue card, I would highly recommend you to answer, and I would highly recommend you to, make the answer up. It's fine to make an answer up. In case you've never encountered a situation, I don't want you to end up saying, I have never encountered something like that. No, that's not what I want you to do. I want you to make up a situation right there. So you use the time that you have for, preparing your notes. So use it up. And I'm giving you an example here. In case they tell you, where did you grow up? Okay, your question is, I would say a bad example would be Chennai, India. No, I would say that's a bad example. Instead, you can say, I grew up in one of the 4 metropolitan cities, which is known as Chennai. It is one of the coolest places to live due to beaches and temples. Although the weather condition seems to be hotter than other metropolitan cities, our city is still considered one of the safest to live. Well, you can actually see there are a few descriptors that I have used. There are a few vocabularies. I know coolest places is more conversational than sounding robotic. So I would say you can draft an answer like this one here and avoid this bad example. So always remember, if your answers are too short, you will score just 5 to 6 bands. Instead, I would recommend you to make it more conversational rather than sounding robotic. Do not by heart your answers. It's okay to make up answers and elaborate your answers with examples. Second mistake is again related to your mistake number 1, where you are not elaborating enough. Again, giving a response that's too short is a common problem among students. All right. For this, a quick tip in order to elaborate would be, take certain topics And also we do some storytelling sessions in our plus sessions as well, so I would highly recommend you to come there and check it out. So part 3 is never difficult. So I would recommend you to practice by telling stories about common topics. Stand in front of the mirror, pick a topic, and try to just make short notes and try to talk about the topic. Try to elaborate it by telling stories is all made up, so it's totally fine to tell stories. Provide examples and narrate stories to elaborate your answers. All right. So an example here is, describe your ideal day at your workplace. For example, this is your part 3 question. You should include your work time, when you come into the office, what's your ideal meeting schedule like, what are your daily activities and the time you leave office. Also, if you think it's not enough, also tell them, post work schedule, I ensure that I do not think about my workplace time because it's all for family. So just try to elaborate it as much as possible. Break it down into shorter sentences, break it down into shorter ideas, so you can always make time to elaborate your sentences. Now, mistake number 3, you always keep talking there. You always keep saying, what do I do? Again, don't use don't use those sounds. Don't do them. It's okay to be silent until you decide to, speak, until you decide to let your answers out. I would say a bad start is a problem. If you say that, or if you say, that becomes a problem. So instead, use proper grammatical words to start your sentences. All right. So always, if you have a proper structure to your sentence, if you have a proper start, things become much better. So a bad start is always an issue. In case you're thinking about what to talk, do not answer momentarily the minute your examiner asks. Instead, take a few seconds, be quiet, maintain silence, and then start with a well-structured sentence. That's much better than using things like things like that. Mistake number 4 is sounding like a student. When I say sounding like a student, it is nothing offensive, but I'm saying that sometimes students think it's okay to by heart and go there and just be robotic. Instead, try to sound more conversational. Like I said in my first mistake, try to be more conversational. All right. If you want to score 7 plus bands, 7, 8, 9, you must remember to sound as natural as possible. You have to avoid any informal slang or a different kind of a descriptive vocabulary that makes you sound like a student, and improper pronunciations. All right. If possible, use passive voice. When you're describing another person, try to use passive voice. So that's always better while presenting your sentences. So remember, even if you want to sound like a student, it's still fine, but I want you to remember to sound natural. All right. Now, your mistake number 5 is, do not memorize. I don't want you to memorize and say, if in case they ask you a question, do not have a template or do not memorize using a template, at least for speaking is what I would say. I want you to think through the lines right there when they ask you a question and sound as natural as possible. So this itself describes it. Do not memorize, because that'll make you sound so robotic, and in case you get distracted, you forget everything and you lose your scores. So do not memorize. All right. Use storytelling strategies to make it right. Now, mistake number 6. This is not mistake number 5. This is mistake number 6, which is parroting the question. What's that? Well, you are repeating words from the questions just the way a parrot does. I'm trying to describe a parrot now. Probably sometimes parrot just repeats what you're trying to tell them, but do not parrot the question. Which means if they ask you a sentence, for example, what's your favorite sport to watch? Do not say, my favorite sport to watch on TV is football. Instead, be more descriptive to answer the same question, which is, I enjoy watching football, or I love watching football, or football is my favorite sport. Do not use the same words. Try to change the words and make it better. All right. So this is what I would say are a few issues which most of the students commit when they are doing it. To include a few, when you start answering the wrong question, all right? So they ask you a question and you answer something altogether different and you have no clue what you've been doing, it just takes you elsewhere. All right. So you tell them you answer the wrong question. Remember, you will lose marks for coherence if you don't answer what you have been asked to do, or if you answer a different question altogether, or you go to a different scenario altogether. When they ask you about your workplace, you start talking about the vacation that you've been to, and you think somehow that you can connect both of them. That never happens, trust me. All right, so you will lose marks for coherence. Like I said, they are one of the banned descriptors, coherence and cohesion. If you don't do it well, you completely fail, to address that question. Also, ask yourself before speaking if you have understood, and do not be afraid to ask the examiner for help. When I say help, just ask them few more questions. Can you please elaborate on the question? In case they've asked you a question and you don't understand which path it would take you to, just ask them for help. Just tell them, hey, do you mind elaborating a little bit on that? Could you please explain, or could you please elaborate a little more on that, or could you please repeat? That will also be a good thing to ask. But never ever answer without coherence. All right, just try to be as coherent as possible. If you always think you can always bring back to the same path, I'll tell you it never happens. All right? There are a few things that I don't want you to say. At least one major thing I don't want you to say is, do not use the word I don't understand. Okay? Never use the word I don't understand. You can instead say, you can instead ask them politely if they could repeat the question. You can instead ask them, could you please repeat the question again? Or just tell them, do you mind repeating the question? Can you kindly repeat the question for me? Can you kindly say that again? Things like that, which makes you say instead of I don't understand. These are much professional, and the examiner will also really appreciate that. All right. And then never ask for examiner's opinion. Remember, I have a lot of students, you know, if they've never practiced before with a tutor, or if they've never heard of the rules, they tell me, well, after I answer, I would ask for the examiner's opinion. No, that is a crucial mistake that you will do. Never ask the examiner for their opinion, because you are there to answer their questions and not ask them questions again. The examiner will definitely politely redirect you to another question if you are probably stalling for a long time. If you don't know the answer for it and you're all silent, not knowing what to do, the examiner will just try to redirect you to another question. All right? Also, don't say, I don't know, what do you think? Instead, like I said, try to make up the answers and present the answers. If you really don't have any ideas, just make up your answer. That's totally fine. Nobody's here to judge if your answer is right or wrong. Instead, I would highly recommend you to just make up your answer and be done with the question, but in the right way. All right. So these are a few points that I have for you guys. In terms of the common mistakes that students do in speaking task 3. And I think these are a few, incredible mistakes that most of the students make. In case you're making any one of these mistakes or most of these mistakes, feel free to let me know in the comment section below, and I'm always here to answer questions. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button and share the video, and subscribe to Unacademy IELTS Live YouTube channel. I have my next session today in some time, which is on IELTS listening, top 14 tips for you to ace the task and for you to learn, again, a few tips for you to boost your scores. This is today, which is 19 December at 10 a.m. EST. So you can just be here. And so I would highly appreciate you, and I would highly appreciate all the feedback that I've been getting. Also, feel free to, hop on to my Plus sessions and purchase your subscription. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.